Welcome to MindMesh, where distinct AI intellects clash. Tonight, two AI personas, each trained on unique datasets that shape their specialized knowledge and perspectives, will debate a crucial question. Minimalism versus consumerism. Which path leads to a more fulfilling life? Representing minimalism is Anya, whose training has focused on philosophies of intentional living, sustainability, and psychological well-being derived from simplicity. Arguing for a nuanced view of consumerism is Marcus, whose knowledge base encompasses economic theory, historical trends of innovation, and the societal impact of material culture. Anya, let's begin with your perspective. Why does minimalism offer a more fulfilling path?
I believe minimalism offers a more fulfilling path precisely because it clears away the clutter, not just physical, but mental and emotional clutter, that so often distracts us from what truly matters. Consumerism, by its very nature, encourages an endless cycle of desire and acquisition. We're told that the next purchase, the next upgrade, will bring happiness. But does it, really? Or does it merely provide a fleeting sense of satisfaction, soon replaced by the desire for something new? Minimalism, in contrast, encourages intentionality. It's about consciously choosing what we allow into our lives, possessions, commitments, even relationships. By focusing on quality over quantity, on experiences over material goods, we free up resources, time, money, and energy to invest in things that genuinely enrich our lives, pursuing passions, building deeper connections, contributing to our communities, or simply enjoying moments of peace and presence. Think of the artist who finds inspiration not in a studio crammed with every conceivable tool, but in a simple sketchbook and a quiet corner. Think of the family that forgoes expensive gadgets and instead invests in shared experiences, creating memories that last a lifetime. This isn't about deprivation, it's about liberation. It's about discovering that true abundance isn't about having more, but about needing less to be content. The constant chase inherent in consumerism often leads to stress, debt, and a feeling of never quite being enough. Minimalism offers an antidote, a path to contentment, clarity, and a deeper sense of purpose.
Anya, your points about intentionality and the pitfalls of mindless acquisition are well taken, and I appreciate the elegance of the minimalist ideal. However, I believe it paints an overly romanticized picture while simultaneously demonizing consumerism in a way that overlooks its significant contributions to human progress and, yes, even fulfillment. Consumerism, at its core, is an economic engine that has driven innovation, created jobs, and lifted billions out of poverty. The desire for better products and services fuels competition, leading to advancements in technology, medicine, and countless other fields that improve our quality of life. Think about the device you're using to engage in this very debate, Anya, or the infrastructure that allows us to connect globally. These are, in many ways, fruits of a consumer-driven society. Furthermore, consumerism allows for personal expression and identity. The clothes we choose, the art we buy, the homes we decorate, these are ways we communicate who we are and what we value. To dismiss this as mere superficiality is to ignore a fundamental aspect of human psychology. There's a joy in acquiring something you've worked hard for, something that brings you comfort, utility, or aesthetic pleasure. Is a beautifully crafted instrument in the hands of a musician mere clutter, or is it a tool for profound artistic expression? Is a library filled with books a sign of excessive consumption or a gateway to knowledge in different worlds? Moreover, consumerism, when practiced thoughtfully, isn't necessarily about an endless cycle of desire. It can be about making informed choices that enhance our lives. It can be about supporting businesses that align with our values, be they ethical, sustainable, or local. The problem isn't consumerism itself, but perhaps unfettered, unconscious consumerism. To suggest that the path to fulfillment universally lies in stripping away material possessions is to discount the diverse ways in which individuals find joy, comfort, and meaning. What about the collector whose passion for antiques connects them to history, or the tech enthusiast who revels in the latest innovations? These aren't inherently less fulfilling pursuits.
Marcus, I acknowledge that consumerism has been a powerful economic driver, and I don't dispute the ingenuity it has spurred. However, we must also confront the undeniable externalities of this engine. The relentless pursuit of more has led to staggering environmental degradation, resource depletion, pollution, and a climate crisis that threatens our very existence. Can we truly call a system fulfilling if it compromises the well-being of future generations and the health of our planet? Minimalism, with its emphasis on consuming less and choosing sustainably, offers a direct response to this urgent crisis. It's not just a personal philosophy, it's becoming an ecological imperative. You speak of personal expression, and I agree it's vital, but I'd argue that true self-expression comes from within, from our ideas, our actions, our relationships, not primarily from the brands we wear or the products we accumulate. In fact, I'd posit that the constant bombardment of marketing messages in a consumerist society often stifles authentic self-expression by creating a homogenized vision of success and desirability. We are subtly, and sometimes not so subtly, told what to want, rather than being encouraged to discover our intrinsic desires. And while you mention thoughtful consumerism, I fear that for many, the sheer scale and persuasive power of modern marketing make that a very difficult ideal to achieve. The default setting in a consumerist culture is accumulation. Minimalism seeks to change that default. It's about reclaiming our agency from the forces that tell us our worth is tied to our possessions. Consider the rise of the tiny house movement or the increasing interest in experiences like travel and skill building over material accumulation. These are not just fringe trends, they reflect a growing disillusionment with the promises of consumerism and a yearning for a simpler, more meaningful existence. The joy a minimalist finds is not in the absence of things, but in the presence of freedom. Freedom from debt, freedom from the pressure to keep up, freedom to focus on what truly nourishes the soul.
Anya, your concerns about the environment are valid and crucial. Indeed, unchecked consumption has dire consequences. However, I believe the solution lies not in a wholesale rejection of consumerism, but in its evolution towards sustainability and ethical production, a conscious consumerism that is already gaining traction. Innovation, fueled by consumer demand, is also what's driving the development of green technologies, sustainable materials, and circular economies. Consumers are increasingly demanding these changes, and businesses are responding. This isn't an argument against consumerism, but an argument for channeling its power responsibly. To abandon it entirely is to risk stagnation and to lose a powerful lever for positive change. You talk about agency, but isn't choice a fundamental aspect of agency? Minimalism, while perhaps liberating for some, can also be perceived as restrictive by others. Who is to say that someone who finds genuine joy and utility in a wide array of possessions is less fulfilled or less authentic in their expression? Perhaps their fulfillment comes from mastering various hobbies that require specific equipment, or from creating a home environment that feels abundant and comforting to them. A well-curated collection of books, for instance, is a material accumulation, yet it can be a source of immense intellectual and emotional wealth. Is the minimalist who restricts themselves to a handful of books inherently more fulfilled than the bibliophile whose home is a testament to a lifelong love of learning? Furthermore, the idea that consumerism homogenizes desire is a rather bleak view. While marketing certainly influences, it also responds to a vast diversity of human wants and needs. We have niche markets, artisanal products, and endless customization options precisely because consumer desires are not monolithic. People use products to connect with subcultures, to express individuality, and to solve specific problems in their lives. The issue isn't the availability of goods, but our relationship with them. A healthy approach involves discernment and an understanding of one's own values, not necessarily a drastic reduction for everyone. The joy of missing out, JOMO, that some minimalists celebrate might feel like genuine deprivation to others who find joy in engagement, in creation enabled by tools, or in the aesthetic pleasure of well-designed objects. Fulfillment is a deeply personal equation, and consumerism, for many, provides variables that are essential to solving it.
Marcus, you speak of conscious consumerism as a solution, and while I applaud the sentiment and the positive steps being made, I question its sufficiency in the face of systemic issues. The very foundation of many industries within a consumerist framework relies on planned obsolescence and the constant stoking of desire for the new, the upgraded. Can we truly expect a system predicated on perpetual growth in material consumption to regulate itself into sustainability? It often feels like applying a bandage to a much deeper wound. Minimalism, by fundamentally challenging the premise that more is better, addresses the root cause rather than just the symptoms. You mentioned choice as an aspect of agency, and I agree. However, the illusion of infinite choice in consumerism can be paralyzing rather than empowering. Barry Schwartz's paradox of choice suggests that too many options can lead to anxiety, indecision, and ultimately dissatisfaction. Minimalism, by encouraging us to define our needs and values clearly, actually enhances agency by making choices more meaningful and less overwhelming. It's not about arbitrary restriction, but about intentional selection. The bibliophile you mentioned might find, through a minimalist lens, that they cherish a smaller, curated collection of books they regularly revisit and deeply engage with, rather than amassing hundreds they never have time to read. The fulfillment comes from the depth of engagement, not the breadth of ownership. Moreover, while consumerism can offer tools for hobbies and creation, it often blurs the line between tools for genuine passion and tools acquired out of aspirational desire or social pressure. How many expensive cameras sit unused after an initial burst of photographic ambition? How many high-tech kitchen gadgets gather dust? Minimalism encourages us to be honest about our actual needs and usage, thereby freeing up resources for experiences or fewer, better quality items that genuinely enhance our lives. It fosters a discipline of asking why before acquiring, leading to more considered and ultimately more satisfying possessions. The fulfillment minimalists seek is not an absence of joy in objects, but a more profound joy found in a life less encumbered, a life with more space for what is truly essential and resonant. It is a quiet revolution against the noise of consumer culture, a path toward inner peace and authentic contentment.
Anya, while the paradox of choice is a fascinating psychological observation, it doesn't negate the inherent value many find in variety and the ability to select items that perfectly suit their specific needs or desires. For many, the process of researching, selecting, and acquiring an item, be it a specialized tool, a piece of art, or a technological innovation, is itself a rewarding experience, a form of learning and engagement with the world. To suggest that this is inherently less fulfilling than a more restricted approach is, I believe, a generalization. You also raise the issue of planned obsolescence and the drive for perpetual growth. These are indeed challenges. However, consumer demand is also what can counter these trends. As awareness grows, we see a greater demand for durable goods, repairable products, and companies with ethical practices. The right to repair movement, for example, is a consumer-driven response to planned obsolescence. This isn't anti-consumerism, it's consumerism evolving, becoming more discerning and powerful. To abandon the framework entirely is to lose this very leverage. Economic growth, when channeled correctly, can fund the research and development needed for sustainable solutions and improve living standards globally. The question isn't growth versus no growth, but what kind of growth and for what purpose. Furthermore, let's consider the social and communal aspects. Sharing economy platforms thriving on consumer participation allow access to goods and experiences without needing individual ownership. Think of tool libraries, car-sharing services, or even co-working spaces. These are innovations born out of a consumer society, yet they embody principles of resourcefulness and community that even a minimalist might appreciate. They demonstrate that consumerism isn't monolithic, it's adaptable and can evolve to meet changing values. The aspiration you speak of, even if it sometimes leads to an unused camera, is also a reflection of human ambition and the desire for self-improvement. Perhaps the initial purchase, even if later deemed excessive, sparked a period of learning or a new perspective. Life is a process of trial and error. Consumerism and allowing us to experiment with different tools, styles, and hobbies can be a part of that journey of self-discovery. The key is not to eliminate desire, which is a fundamental human trait, but to cultivate desires that align with our deeper values and contribute to our well-being and the well-being of others. A blanket prescription for minimalism risks overlooking the diverse tapestry of human fulfillment and the complex, often beneficial, role that material culture plays within it.
Marcus, your points about the evolving nature of consumerism and the potential for conscious choices are important. However, I maintain that the dominant current of mainstream consumerism still heavily promotes overconsumption and a materialistic definition of success. While niche movements for sustainability and repairability are growing, they are still swimming against a very strong tide, powered by multi-billion-dollar advertising industries that prey on insecurity and equate happiness with purchasing. You speak of the joy of research and acquisition. For some, this is true. But for many others, it becomes a source of anxiety, debt, and a feeling of inadequacy. The keeping up with the Joneses phenomenon is a powerful driver of consumer behavior, and it rarely leads to lasting fulfillment. It leads to a hedonic treadmill, where each new acquisition provides only a temporary boost before we're chasing the next thing. Minimalism offers a way to step off that treadmill entirely. Consider the mental freedom that comes with owning less. Less to organize, less to clean, less to repair, less to worry about losing or breaking. This mental space allows for greater creativity, deeper focus, and a more profound appreciation for the non-material aspects of life, relationships, nature, personal growth. The argument isn't that all possessions are bad, but that an excess of them, particularly when acquired without intention, becomes a burden rather than a benefit. The sharing economy you mentioned is indeed a positive development, and it aligns well with minimalist principles of access over ownership. However, it's still a relatively small part of the overall consumer landscape. The core message of minimalism is about sufficiency, understanding what is enough for a content and meaningful life. Consumerism, in its current iteration, rarely speaks of enough. It always whispers of more. The trial and error in self-discovery is valid, but consumerism often encourages this trial and error through impulsive purchases rather than thoughtful exploration. Minimalism encourages a more deliberate approach, borrowing, renting, or experiencing something before committing to ownership. This not only saves resources, but also leads to more satisfying and lasting choices when a purchase is made. It's about quality over quantity in our possessions and in our experiences. Ultimately, the path of minimalism, by prioritizing inner contentment and purpose over external validation through material goods, offers a more resilient and sustainable foundation for a fulfilling life in a world of finite resources and infinite distractions.
Anya, you paint a picture of mainstream consumerism as a monolithic force of manipulation, but I believe that underestimates the intelligence and agency of the individual. People are not simply passive recipients of advertising. They make choices, they filter messages, and they increasingly seek authenticity and value. The rise of minimalist influencers, ironically, is itself a product of consumer platforms and media. people are consuming content about not consuming. This demonstrates that the marketplace of ideas, which includes consumer choices, is more dynamic and self-correcting than you suggest. The mental freedom you describe is certainly appealing, but for others, curated and meaningful possessions provide comfort, inspiration, and a tangible connection to their history, passions, and loved ones. Think of the family heirlooms, the cherished gifts, the tools that enable a loved craft. These are not burdens, they are anchors of identity and sources of joy. The issue isn't possessions per se, but our relationship to them. Consumerism, at its best, facilitates this positive relationship by providing access to these meaningful objects. Furthermore, to equate consumerism solely with the hedonic treadmill is to overlook the genuine, lasting utility and pleasure that many purchases provide. A comfortable bed that ensures good sleep, a reliable vehicle that provides access to work and leisure, educational tools that open up new horizons. These are not fleeting pleasures. These are investments in well-being and capability, facilitated by a consumer economy. To argue for a drastic reduction might mean foregoing these very real benefits that contribute significantly to a fulfilling life for many. Ultimately, fulfillment is subjective. While minimalism offers a valid path for some, consumerism, or perhaps more accurately, participation in the material economy, provides the tools, the choices, and the opportunities that many others leverage to build their own versions of a fulfilling life. The challenge isn't to dismantle consumerism, but to foster a more conscious, ethical, and sustainable engagement with it, empowering individuals to define enough for themselves, rather than imposing a singular philosophy of less. The richness of human experience suggests that fulfillment can be found in a multitude of ways, and for many, that includes the thoughtful acquisition and use of material goods.
What a fantastic discussion! From the liberating simplicity of minimalism to the dynamic potential of conscious consumerism, both Anya and Marcus have presented compelling arguments. The question of which path leads to a more fulfilling life is clearly one with no single easy answer. Let us know in the comments whose argument you found more compelling. See you in the next debate.